Okay, here we go. This is session number 76. We're in chapter 10, called The Idols of Sickness. And section 4, The End of Sickness. A friend of mine, Jennifer Norton, we were reflecting on the synchronicity of this, having almost a year and a half now of doing these videos and going through the book in sequence. And we're up to chapter 10. And we just so happens to be what we call, it's the year 2020, and I like to call it TC, in the time of Corona. All right, this is the time of the coronavirus sweeping across the world. And here we are talking about the God of sickness, the idols of sickness, the end of sickness. Okay? And one thing that keeps coming up for me is that Jesus is always talking about the mind. All right? As we said in the previous sections, the idea of sickness is the idea, once you believe that you're separated from your source, once you believe that you left the mind of God, that you are something other than you are not, all right? Jesus says you're sick, okay? And it doesn't say that as condemnation or judgment or anything. It's just a statement of fact. The mind is sick now, okay? That's the one problem, the belief in separation. I believe I could separate from my source, from my creator, all right? And he says that's a sickness, all right? And we create all these idols of sickness, all right? Everything in this world is a testament to the belief that I separated from my source. And as an individual ego, you just ask yourself, do you like to be wrong? No. Nobody likes to be wrong. You're wrong. No, I'm not. You're wrong. All right? So nobody likes to be wrong. The ego doesn't like to be wrong, so it keeps putting up proof that yes, you're right, you separated from your source. You separated from your source. The body is the big proof you separated. Right? We're separated from other bodies. Now we're going to keep you social distance, as they say, right? So there's even more separation in form, physically. Organizations separate. The ego constantly is in a state of separation. It's even in the biological sense, right? When the cells, they just keep separating, right? Especially when a sperm cell makes an egg, and the egg is fertilized, automatically the cells just keep separating and separating and separating until here I am. All right? Happy birthday. All right? But everything, if you take notice in the universe, everything keeps separating. Okay? And it stems from the first belief that I could separate from my source. And I could do the same things because my mind is powerful, still as powerful as it was, still as powerful as it always was. The mind is powerful. But I believe that I can create. So there it is. Here's this whole world. All right? But Dr. Wapnick's wonderful wife, Gloria, she used to correct people saying it's miscreation. in the text, Jesus makes a difference between creating, which is our function in heaven, our original function in the mind of God. We create as God creates, which simply means extension of all that is. All right? Extension of all that is. That's our true function. Okay? And in this situation in which we find ourselves, right, Jesus will refer to it as a dream. Right? We miscreate. We make things. That's the word Jesus uses. Make. Right? The difference between making and creating. Right? So they have it. And that's about the sickness, right? This idea that we're separated from our source. The mind is split. It needs to be healed. It needs to be brought together. Okay? And on that note, now there's two words that Jesus is going to use right in the first sentence. And there's a big preface to section 4, but they're words that students of the course would do well to comprehend. The first one is magic, where Jesus says all magic is an attempt at reconciling the irreconcilable. Okay? So the idea of magic is the idea that the problem and the solution are outside the mind. Everything is outside the mind. Right? So all the means that we use to solve perceived problems are magic. Right? And once again, Jesus is not saying that, pointing a finger, telling you, well, that's stupid, you believe in magic and all that. He's never doing that. He's just using words to help us notice the situation we're in. Okay? And a wonderful quote about magic that Dr. Wapnick he even enjoyed it. He says, yes, I came up with that one. And I know my father would have loved it. It says it's a maladaptive solution to a non-existent problem. Okay? So the ego uses magic. So the problem is outside. Right? The problem is outside. One that pops up is, say, it's loneliness. I hear a lot of people talk about loneliness. Right? So the problem seems to be outside your mind, because you have to do, well, let's do this. Join a group. Go call up a friend that you haven't seen, whatever. The solution is outside the mind. Okay? Go pick up an instrument, join a band. And there's in New York, we've found, because Jean loves to play music, and she's determined to play music, she found an organization called the New York Late Starters Orchestra. And that's a group that will take in, people that maybe studied music in college, but now they're, now they're senior citizens or something, now they're retired. And there's another group on 11th Street, although it's called the 3rd Street School. Long story. But they have what they call the Green Band, and anybody could join that. You play an instrument, come on down. That's the way it goes. So that's an outside solution, and it might help people, but it only helps for a while. If somebody is seriously lonely or seriously depressed, all right, that group might help for a while, right? Or other things they do, whatever it is you do to keep your mind off it. All of a sudden it doesn't work after a while. I mean, people resort to, hey, let's go to the bar, let's have a few drinks, let's whatever, It doesn't work after a while. Let me tell you, that does not work. All right? So these are maladaptive solutions, all right, to non-existent problems. Kent says the problem, that loneliness, it's only your perception. If we were to come back in the mind and join with the Holy Spirit, with Jesus, there would be no loneliness. There would be no fear. Right? So the ego wants to solve the problem, sort of. Right? But the ego doesn't want you to solve your problems, really. It always wants you to be in that mindset where there's something wrong. In other words, you're guilty of something. You're lacking something. There's a void somewhere. All right. So enough already about magic. All right. Just remember that the magic is, it tries to solve a problem. It tries to solve the problem of guilt, actually, by seeing it outside in all different forms. Okay? And I'm sure we'll talk more about that as time goes on. Right? And the other word is the reconciliation, to reconcile. So what I did was I looked up a couple of definitions. And so it says to reconcile is to cause a person to accept or be resigned to something not desired, right? So I'm reconciled to wearing glasses, right? All kinds of things, all right? You're reconciled to wearing special shoes or something, You'd rather not, you'd rather wear your favorite Fred Astaire shoes or something so you could dance. You'd rather wear your sneakers or something, but certain physical conditions, you got to wear their shoes, so you reconcile. All right. Then there's another one here that's to reconcile, to bring into agreement or harmony. Right. To bring to agreement or harmony, to make compatible or consistent. Make compatible or consistent, to bring something into harmony. Okay? And this is what Jesus says in that first sentence. So all magic, the attempt outside the mind, is an attempt to reconcile the irreconcilable. All right? To bring into harmony the unharmonious. To bring into order the chaotic, right? To reconcile the irreconcilable. So magic is the attempt to reconcile the ego world, the ego thought system, all right? To make an attempt to bring harmony into the cacophony. Right? Then he says all religion is the recognition that the irreconcilable cannot be reconciled. Right? So religion will hold up the ideal, right? And then they tell you it's far away, and you got to do certain things to get it, but you're original. But there's the idea that you're really a sinner, all that stuff that we've spoken about. Right? All religion is the recognition that the irreconcilable cannot be reconciled. Sickness and perfection are irreconcilable. If God created you perfect, you are perfect. If you believe you can be sick, you have placed other gods before him. God is not at war with the God of sickness you made, but you are. He is the symbol of deciding against God. And you are afraid of him because he cannot be reconciled with God's will. If you attack him, you will make him real to you. But if you refuse to worship him in whatever form he may appear to you, and whatever you think you see him, or wherever you think you see him, he will disappear into the nothingness out of which he was made. Okay? So, he says the true God is not at war with the God of sickness that you made. Right? The ego in all its forms. Right? He says God's not at war with that. All right? But you are. Right? God is the symbol of this. The ego is the symbol of deciding against God. And you are afraid of him because he cannot be reconciled with God's will. Right? So this God that we've made up in the ego thought system, right? We're afraid. We're afraid of that God because it cannot be brought into harmony with God's will, which is oneness and extension of love. That's God's will. All right? Happiness, peace, right? Invulnerability. All those things are wrapped up into the extension of God's will. And the God we've made up is, irreconcilable with that. All right? He goes stomping around the gardens looking to get you. Excuse me. I should have done the side cough, but I'll wash my hands later. All right. So the God that we've made is the symbol of deciding against God. Right? If you attack him, you will make him real to you. All right? So if we, think, if we're even projecting onto this God we made, right? He becomes real to us. He's a punisher, he's the Santa Claus, he's, whatever. We make him real to us, right? He says, but if you refuse to worship him, if you refuse to even give him the time of day, so to speak, in whatever form he may appear to you, and wherever you think you see him. So if you just notice when you're attending to that God and then say, wait, there is a better way, show me what peace looks like. All right? If you basically refuse to worship him, he will disappear into the nothingness out of which he was made. So we're talking about the ego here, right? That the ego is the God of sickness that we bow down to, we worship, right? The ego thought system. That ego thought system that says you're guilty, you separated from God, you separated from the oneness, and you should be punished, and you're going to be. So this is the whole idea of the Course, is to look at those thoughts, look at those beliefs whenever they appear, and then ask for help. Help me to see that correctly. Right? I believe I committed a sin. Right? I believe I did something worthy of eternal punishment. Or even, worthy of just misfortune or something. That's the time to notice it and look and say, okay, how do I see this correctly? Okay? But if you refuse to worship him, he will disappear into the nothingness out of which he was made. Okay? So we look at all these little pieces of the ego thought system when they arise, when we become aware of them. And ask for help. We reach We reach into the mind and say, help me to see this correctly, with that sincere desire to see it differently, to see it through the eyes of peace, no matter what it is. Okay? Oh, and since I hit the ground running, I forgot to mention my change in surroundings here. Okay? Just for a little while, just a different room in the house, in the apartment, that's all. All righty then. Paragraph 2. Reality can dawn only on an unclouded mind. It is always there to be accepted, but its acceptance depends on your willingness to have it. To know reality must involve the willingness to judge unreality for what it is. To overlook nothingness is merely to judge it correctly. And because of your ability to evaluate it truly, to let it go. Knowledge cannot dawn on a mind full of illusions, because truth and illusions are irreconcilable. Right? Truth and illusion cannot be brought into harmony. Right? We have to look at the illusion for what it is and let it go. All right? You know, evaluate the illusion truly, as he says. You evaluate it truly and then let it go. Knowledge cannot dawn on a mind full of illusions because truth and illusions are irreconcilable. Truth is whole and cannot be known by part of a mind. Right? So truth is whole and it cannot be known by part of the mind. So, as we say in the Course, our mind is split. The minute we thought, oh, maybe I could be separate from oneness, boom, the mind split. Now a decision had to be made. What is it I want? Okay? All right? And that decision is always ongoing. Do I want truth? Okay? Because we're not going to find truth in the wrong mind, that part of the mind that thinks it's split. Right? The best we're going to do is see reflections of the truth because of willingness, because of the willingness. Okay? And I hope that was not an interruption. Siri thought I was calling her again. All right? So the best we can do is get reflections of the truth here within this illusion, right? And work ourselves back to the truth, okay? And Jesus knows it's a process. He's going to let you know in this section, right? So to know reality must involve the willingness to judge unreality for what it is, all right? So in order to know reality, all right, I must be willing to see unreality, the world, the ego thought system, everything in it, including me. All right? I must be able to see the unreality and judge it for what it is. All right? It is illusion. All right? All right? But what comes up for me is that you need to ask for help to know that. Okay? You can't just go painting over everything. You can't use your whiteout and say, all right, that's just an illusion. All right? You know, this virus is just an illusion. Don't go there. Okay? All right? That's we need help in seeing unreality for what it is. All right? And for us in the Course in Miracles, that help is the holy instant, the going to the right mind and asking Jesus, Holy Spirit, help me to see this correctly, with that willingness to see it correctly. reality can dawn only on an unclouded mind, right? The distractions are gone. It is always there. Reality is always there to be accepted, he says. But its acceptance depends on your willingness to have it. All right, how badly do you want it? You know, because in different places, it's going to say you can't have a little bit of heaven in hell. Right? We have to say, no, I don't want hell anymore. All right? So, paragraph 2, sentence 5, just to bring it home, as they say in music. Knowledge cannot dawn on a mind full of illusions, because truth and illusions are irreconcilable. Truth is whole and cannot be known by part of a mind. Paragraph 3. The sonship cannot be perceived as partly sick, because to perceive it that way is not to perceive it at all. If the sonship is one, it is one in all respects. Oneness cannot be divided. If you perceive other gods, your mind is split, and you will not be able to limit the split, because it is the sign that you have removed part of your mind from God's will. And this means it's out of control. To be out of control is to be out of reason, and then the mind does become unreasonable. By defining the mind wrongly, you perceive it as functioning wrongly. Okay? It's just an eloquent way of describing what happens when we choose to believe we're separated from God. That part of the mind that thinks it left the wholeness, okay? It's out of control now, right? It's running around from one thing to another. First, trying to prove that it did the separation. Yay, I'm victorious, all right? But then it tries to get out from underneath the guilt. No, it wasn't me. He did it, right? It's an insane situation. It's out of control, all right? Because you think you can detach part of your mind from God's will, all right? All right? To be out of control is to be out of reason. It's unreasonable. It's insane. And then the mind does become unreasonable. By defining the mind wrongly, you perceive it as functioning wrongly. All right? He says, once you believe you're out, you're separated from God, then you're perceiving things incorrectly. All right? Paragraph 4. God's law will keep your mind at peace, because peace is His will, and His laws are established to uphold it. His are the laws of freedom, but yours are the laws of bondage. Since freedom and bondage are irreconcilable, their laws cannot be understood together. The laws of God work only for your good, and there are no other laws besides His. Everything else is merely lawless and therefore chaotic. Yet God Himself has protected everything He created by His laws. Everything that is not under them does not exist. Laws of chaos is a meaningless term. Creation is perfectly lawful, and the chaotic is without meaning, because it is without God. You have given your peace to the gods you made, but they are not there to take it from you, and you cannot give it to them. All right? That last sentence, he goes, you have given your peace to the gods you made, all right? To this whole ego thought system. All right? Think of the things that, just everything in the world. is an obstacle to peace. And we say, oh, it took my peace away. You know, this argument, this upbringing, this movie, this, you know, this guy on the street scared me, took my peace away. What they said to me took my peace away. All that. He says, all that. He says, you've given your peace to the gods you made, to the ego thought system and all its representations. Right? He says, but they're not there to take it from you. They're not there. And you cannot give it to them. Right? You can't give your peace away. Right? I mean, if you think about that sentence, you could think about that sentence and just open up a portal to the awareness of your own immortality. Right? Those gods are not there to take your peace. And you couldn't give it to them anyway if you wanted to. Your peace is always with you. You are peace. Okay? He's telling us in so many words that there's nothing out there. Okay? And once again, this is a process of coming to this realization. Okay? At one point, Jesus tells us that the awareness of who you are, I mean, it's in the words of the 60s, 70s, it would blow your mind if it came on you all at once, right? So we approach it with trepidation, and we approach it little by little, step by step. We take these steps, okay? And the steps that the Course teaches us come under the umbrella of forgiveness. And forgiveness in the Course is when I take back my projection of guilt and I become willing to see the truth. All right? Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard. All right? But that's the reflection of heaven. That's the reflection of our function in heaven. Our function in heaven is to extend all that is, to extend love. Our function here in the dream is forgiveness, which is a reflection of that. A reflection of love is to be willing to see that spark of the Godhead in the other. To be willing to see the innocence, right, past the disguise. Okay? So, the laws of God work only for your good. And there are no other laws besides his. Okay? Keeps telling you there's nothing out there. All right? Everything else is merely lawless and therefore chaotic. Yet God himself has protected everything he created by his laws. All right? And I have a little note in the sideline here that reminding us that ideas, and we are an idea in the mind of God. All right? Ideas don't leave their source. Okay? You have an idea. See now the idea that comes up for me right away. I have this idea that an ice cream cone is just appearing in my head, right? Must be the self-quarantining here. All right. But that idea doesn't leave I don't see an ice cream cone in my corner here. I don't see it in the closet or anything. Right? That idea is still in my mind. Right? And it always will be. Right? Can't get rid of that. But that's the idea. God thought of you. You're still there in God's mind. Everything out here is illusory and therefore chaotic. All right? He says everything that is, yet God has protected everything he created by his laws. All right? And everything that is not under them does not exist. Laws of chaos is a meaningless term. Creation is perfectly lawful. And the chaotic is without meaning because it is without God. It says you have, quote unquote, given your peace to the gods you made, but they're not there to take it from you, and you could not give it to them. Okay? Paragraph 5. You are not free to give up freedom, but only to deny it. You cannot do what God did not intend, because what he did not intend does not happen. Your gods do not bring chaos. You are endowing them with chaos and accepting it of them. Right? All this has never been. Nothing but the laws of God have ever been, and nothing but his will ever be. You were created through his laws and by his will, and the manner of your creation established you a creator. What you have made is so unworthy of you that you could hardly want it. If you were willing to see it as it is, you will see nothing at all, and your vision will automatically look beyond it to what is in you and all around you. Reality cannot break through the obstructions you interpose, but it will envelop you completely when you let them go. Right? Just as in the introduction to the Course, Jesus says it's not a course about love, right? Which would blow your mind in familiar terms, all right? Which is beyond your perception, all right? But it is a course in removing the obstacles to the awareness of love's presence. And he's just saying that differently here. All right? Reality cannot break through the obstructions you interpose, right? The obstacles that I put in between me and reality. But reality will envelop you, all right, completely when you let them go. So when we remove the obstacles, we will become aware of love's presence. We will become aware of reality. It will envelop you completely when you let them go. That moment becomes more and more desirable as we progress. Okay? Because he says, to go over paragraph 5 again, he says, you're not free to give up freedom, right? You can't give up who you really are, but you can deny it. You can say, no, that's not me. That's not me. Not me, that was my brother. You cannot do what God did not intend. Right? So God did not intend you to separate from the mind. All right? So you can't do that. Right? Because what he did not intend does not happen. So, but we can only make believe, right? Because our mind is so powerful that we don't even realize. You know, guys like Stephen Hawking could touch on it, and talk about parallel universes and, you know, all time happening right now, you know, concepts like that, you know. But he says if God didn't intend, it doesn't happen. All right? There are people who get close to the truth and try to tell us about it. And they get it in different ways, you know. And then he says, your gods did not bring chaos. All right? You are endowing them with chaos and accepting it of them. And why would we do that? So that we're not guilty. It's not my fault. All right? Yes, of course, there's chaos. But look, it's because of that, because of them, because of this. All right? He says, your gods didn't bring chaos. You gave it to them. All right? And you accepted it from them. So I could be the victim. I could be innocent when God gets here. Say, look, man, I didn't do this. I'm not this way because of anything I did. I'm this way because of all these things, all these people. I swear. But that's what we do. That's the idea of becoming the innocent victim. All right, it wasn't my fault. Right? I love it on that show, Cops, when somebody gets busted for a broken taillight and it winds up they got, you know, $800 worth of drugs in their pocket. The guy goes, no, it's not my pants, it's my brother's pants, my roommate's pants. I just put them on quickly this morning. I didn't realize. I didn't realize I had that huge bump in my back pocket. But that's it. When God comes down, he pulls us over, and he says, all right, Kevin, you did it. He said, no, I didn't. It wasn't me. It was them. It was those gods. They made me chaotic, right? So, where was I before I so rudely interrupted myself here? All right. All this, he says, all this chaos has never been. All right. Nothing but the laws of God have ever been, and nothing but his will ever be. All right. So the only thing is the extension of love, the extension of totality, of spaciousness. You know, even words that we use limit what God has created. He says, and that's the only thing that will ever be. Okay? He says, you were created through his laws and by his will, and the manner of your creation established you as a creator. Right? So the way you were created made you a creator. You were created just like God, as they say, in the image and likeness of God. And you became a creator, okay? Which means that your function is to extend all that is. All right? What you have made is so unworthy of you that you could hardly want it, right? If you were willing to see it as it is, you wouldn't want it. You will see nothing at all. And your vision will automatically look beyond it to what is in you and all around you. Right? So if you really saw things for what they are, you know, just trying to prove that I separated from God, he says you wouldn't want it. All right? If you really saw who you really were, you would automatically say, no, what was I thinking? And you come right back. All right? Because when reality does, when we lay down those obstructions, those obstacles to the awareness of love, all right, reality will envelop you completely. All right? Completely when you let them go. Paragraph 6. When you have experienced the protection of God, the making of idols becomes inconceivable. There are no strange images in the mind of God, and what is not in his mind cannot be in yours, because you are of one mind, and that mind belongs to him. It is yours because it belongs to him. For to him, ownership is sharing. And if it is so for him, it is so for you. His definitions are his laws, for by them he established the universe as what it is. No false gods you attempt to interpose between yourself and your reality affect truth at all. Peace is yours because God created you, and he created nothing else. Okay? Peace is yours because God created you, and he created nothing else. Right? He didn't create all this stuff. Right? He created you, and you are peace. All right? You are that, as Gangaji would say. All right? And he says, when you have experienced the protection of God, the making of idols becomes inconceivable. All right? And because we are the way we are, and I am the way I am, this is a process. Okay? But little by little, with practice, that practice of saying, oh, wait, I really don't want to, I've been down that road before. I don't want this anymore. You know, the this might be a specific situation, you know, some kind of resentment or a fear or something, or, you know, a judgment on someone else or even on yourself. You might get to the point where you say, I really don't want this anymore. And we go to the mind and we ask our higher self, Jesus, Holy Spirit, right? Or whatever you want to call it, the word doesn't matter, right? Buddha, right? Higher power, you know, higher self, Jesus, right? And as I say, Ken would say, Kam Yanko, the bagel salesman in Brooklyn. It doesn't matter what you call it. We say, I don't want this anymore. And we ask that part of the mind that remembers who we are, help me to see it correctly. And that's the practice. And little by little, we become aware of the protection of God. We become aware that, yes, there is something other than this. There is something other than this chaotic, frightening world. There is that peaceful place within me. All right? There is that place of solitude, that sanctuary. All right? You know, go to that peaceful place within and you experience the protection of God. He says, peace is yours because God created you. And oh, by the way, he created nothing else. You are the thought that he extended. Okay? Paragraph 7. The miracle is the act of a Son of God who has laid aside all false gods and calls on his brothers to do likewise. It is an act of faith, because it is the recognition that his brothers can do it. It is a call to the Holy Spirit in his mind, a call to that, a call that is strengthened, rather, by joining, a call that is strengthened, a call to the Holy Spirit, and a call that is strengthened by joining with the Holy Spirit. Because the miracle worker has heard God's voice. He strengthens it in a sick brother by weakening his belief in sickness, right, which he does not share. The power of one mind can shine into another because all the lamps of God were lit by the same spark. It is everywhere and it is eternal. All right, this is the wonderful poetic imagery used in the course. All right. It's the mind can shine into another mind because it's the lamp, and all the lamps were lit by God. They're lit by the same spark. It is everywhere and it is eternal. Okay? So that miracle, that change in perception, is the act of a Son of God who has laid aside all false gods. All right? It's the putting down the ego. All right? And that opens the person up to be a channel of all that is, and it thereby calls on others to do likewise. Right? It's not a matter of preaching or teaching or writing or broadcasting. It's being that present channel of love, because your mind is connected to all minds. It's an act of faith, because it's the recognition that his brother can do it. Right? It's an act of faith because you truly believe that the spark is in the other and it can be reinforced. Right? Like that little spark to start the campfire. That little spark to, if you have a fireplace at home, and then all of a sudden there's air put onto the spark. And it grows. And that's what we do. We recognize that each brother, each sister, everyone has the ability to increase the flame. All right? And it's a call to the Holy Spirit in his mind, and a call that is strengthened by joining. Right? I ask for help. Help me to see correctly. And I'm joining with Jesus, joining with Holy Spirit. Right? And it strengthens the call. Right? And because the miracle worker has heard God's voice, he strengthens it in a sick brother by weakening his belief in sickness, which he does not share. And we weaken the belief in sickness by remembering that we're not separated from God. All right? And he is not separated. The other person acting out is really not separated from God, even though they're acting out as the result of their belief that they're separated from God. Okay? And because I can see past his song and dance, they're acting out because you could see past it and realize their innocence, realize who they really are. Right? We're strengthening that idea in the mind, in their mind also. It might not show up right away, but that's what's happening. That spark is growing in their mind. Okay? You strengthen it in a sick brother by weakening his belief in sickness. Right? The power of one mind can shine into another, because all the lamps of God were lit by the same spark. It is everywhere and it is eternal. Paragraph 8. In many, only the spark remains, for the great rays are obscured. Yet God has kept the spark alive, so that the rays can never be completely forgotten. If you but see the little spark, you will learn of the greater light, for the rays are there, unseen. Perceiving the spark will heal, but knowing the light will create. Yet in the returning, the little light must be acknowledged first. For the separation was a descent from magnitude to littleness. But the spark is still as pure as the great light, because it is the remaining call of creation. Put all your faith in it, and God Himself will answer you. Put all your faith in the spark. Put all that faith in the right mind, in the memory of who you are. Right? Come to that stately calm within, as they say, and ask, help me to see this correctly, with a sincere desire to see it correctly, knowing that the way we've always seen it doesn't work. It's the maladaptive solutions to the non-existent problems. But we truly believe these problems exist. So we come to the stately calm within. All right. And put your faith in it, and God Himself will answer. Okay? So back to top of paragraph 8, he says, in many, only the spark remains. Okay? And present company excluded, of course, but you could probably think of plenty of examples of where only the spark remains. Okay? But it's never absent, no matter how despicable the person or the condition might be. The spark is always there. Okay? But it's just the great rays are obscured. Who they and we really are, they're obscured. Okay? Yet, God has kept the spark alive. So the rays can never be completely forgotten. No matter how horrible you think this person is, that spark of who they really are, that spark of being connected to the oneness, being a part of the mind of God, being an innocent child of God, right? That spark is still there. Okay? And he says, and if you can see that little spark, right, this is the act of forgiveness, the process of forgiveness, where I say to Jesus, I'm willing to see that spark. All right? I'm willing to become aware of it. Okay? He says, if you but see the little spark, you will learn of the greater light. Okay? So if I'm willing to see that spark in the other, all right, I'm just willing to see it. He says, you will learn of that great light. All right? You'll learn of the greater light. Right? Because the greater light, the rays, the great rays, he calls them, they're always there, unseen. Okay? Perceiving the spark will heal. So that process of forgiveness, it will heal the split mind. It will heal the idea of separation. Okay? But knowing the light will create. All right? So we will continue to be willing to see the spark in others. And all of a sudden, we will know the light. And we will be back enveloped in the light, and we will be creating. We'll be aware that we are creating once again. Right? We are extending everything. Okay? All right? Perceiving the spark will heal, but knowing the light will create. Yet, and here's where Jesus says, look, I know it's a process. Okay? He says, yet, in the returning, in the returning to the light, in the returning to the awareness of who you really are, all right, the little light must be acknowledged first. All right? I must be willing to see the little light. Okay? He says, because the separation was a descent. All right? As Ken said, we climbed the ladder down, now we're climbing the ladder back up. All right? Because the separation was a descent from magnitude, from greatness to littleness. But the spark is still as pure as the great light, because it is the remaining call of creation. Right? So that little spark, it's the same as the great light. It's the remaining call. It's that memory of who you are. Okay? He says, put all your faith in it. Put all your faith in it. And God himself will answer you. All right? It's a matter of trust. Put your faith in seeing that light. Help me to see correctly. I'm willing to see the spark of creation and innocence and love in the other. I'm willing to see it. And then just let the awareness arise through your sincerity. Put all your faith in it, and God himself will answer you. Jesus guarantees it. Okay? So, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the opportunity. And I thank whatever guidance I receive for doing this. All right? I always have the most fun. So we'll see you next time for session 77. All right? So practice. And remember, it is a process. But it's the willingness, is the process. I'm willing to see the spark in the other. Okay? All righty then. Love you. Talk to you soon. Bye.